Today is June 26th, and this is Michelle, and I'm interviewing Joe Brakes. So, Joe, I remember last time you were telling me about the crewman strikes and how those were usually the ones that longshoremen would win.
Yeah.
Can you just talk a little bit more about that?
Well, the one that sticks in my memory was a Greek ship came into Fraser Surrey dock. As soon as they got into the dock, within a day or so, they went on strike, and the ship kicked them all off the ship, so they were all on the dock. And because they put up a picket line at the foot of the gangplank, we wouldn't go on the ship. We refused to go on. So that means the ship wasn't working. So then we were all sent home, but the picket line stayed there, and they wouldn't let them back on the ship. So a bunch of our guys took them home, and they slept in their basements. And one fellow named Bernie LaHaye, he had about 20 or 30 of them in his basement, sleeping in his basement. And they fed them and looked after them. And the strike went on for quite a while, I'd say probably a week or more. And they just kept picketing at the foot of the gangplank, and we wouldn't cross. And the issue was that they hadn't been paid for 6 to 8 months. And there was all kinds of bad food and all kinds of other issues, but the big one was there's no pay. They hadn't been paid. So what happened was the shipping company hired a law firm that tried to intimidate them.
A local law firm?
Yeah, a local Vancouver law firm, and the lawyers came out and they tried to intimidate the picketers, and we were there, but we couldn't get involved but the picketers wouldn't quit. They just stayed at the foot of the gangplank. So eventually, it was about a week or so later. The strikes had gone on for maybe, I'd say, 2 weeks by this point. The Greek ambassador came out, and he went on the ship.
And because it was a Greek ship.
It was a Greek ship, so the Greek ambassador went on, and then shortly a while, another limousine pulled up, and it was the Filipino ambassador. So he gets out and he said, I'm supposed to meet, but it was funny, we were all standing on the dock and he wouldn't go on the ship until the Greek ambassador came out and formally invited him on.
Okay.
So we sat there for about 2 hours while this process went back and forth. And eventually we were all invited onto the ship, and so then the issues went on. And there was a fellow named Tom McGrath. He was the Seamen's Union representative, and he was there. And so we started going over what the issues were. And like I say, the big one was they hadn't been paid for 6 to 8 months. They were owed quite a bit of money, like maybe $1,000 American or more.
That's a lot.
In those days, it was a lot of money. Yeah, we're talking back in the 70s here.
Yeah.
So anyway, after a couple of days of bargaining with all these people, eventually they agreed to pay them. And then we got them a bonus for having to wait. And we got them business class tickets back to Philippines, everybody. There was a crew of about 30 people involved in this thing. So I remember I wasn't involved in the last day because I had some other meetings. But anyway, that night I went down to the Renaissance Hotel where they'd put them up to stay, to wait for the plane the next day. And they were really happy. They had all this money. It was all cash, too, American cash.
Wow.
And so they'd won the strike, and they were going home. But the leader of it, I can't remember his name. I think he was because his English was really excellent, and he said that they won the strike and they got their money, but most of them probably would never sail again. They'd be blacklisted.
Right.
So anyway, they were happy to get going home and see their families, and they had all this money. So. Then the leader, he wrote me a few letters, and he finally did get back to sea, but apparently the rest of them never sailed again.
Yeah.
So.
And what was your position in the 502 at this time?
I was president of the local.
President.
Yeah, I was president of the local at the time.
And so, even though this was a crewman's issue, you were allowed to get involved.
Well, we got involved because. Once the picket line went up, our guys wouldn't cross, so instantly we have to deal with that issue. And so we said we're not going to cross any picket lines.
Yeah.
And then we went a little further and said because we wouldn't work, we wouldn't supply a crew to let the ship go, so the ship couldn't go because it was up to us to release the lines.
Yeah.
And then we said, just put a little pressure on. We said, we'll put water pickets up so the tugs won't come in either. So the ship couldn't sail. The ship was trapped. Yeah. because they couldn't get tugs to sail it.
Yeah.
We wouldn't let it go,
Yeah.
so the ship was trapped.
Yeah.
And then the reason we could get away with that is because there was a picket line which we didn't have to cross.
Right. Okay. And what year was this, do you think?
I'm going to say this is 73, 74.
73? Yeah. And do you know why these crewmen picked New Westminster?
Well, they picked basically the BC ports, but they picked us a lot because they knew they would get that kind of support.
Yeah.
And then we had this fellow like this Tom McGrath, who was a business agent for the Seamen's Union. So we would use him because he understood the maritime law and all the contracts.
Yeah. And where was his office? Was it
In
New Westminster?
Vancouver.
Vancouver?
Yeah. So when we get one of these, if we didn't settle it right away, we would call Tom and he would come out and help us with the negotiations. But usually most times we'd negotiate with just the captain or maybe an agent for the ship. This was the only one where the ambassadors got involved.
Yeah. And how often would there be crewmen strikes?
Well, I'd say probably once a year. Like some usually might be a couple or three, and then you get a year where there'd be none. But average probably one a year.
And what were the majority of the issues?
Most was pay.
Okay. Yeah.
And sometimes it was working conditions.
Yeah.
Like I was on one involved in where the ship was so bad that the toilet wasn't bolted down to the floor. So the guys would have to get the toilet from wherever it had vibrated to in the bathroom and put it over the hole to use it.
Oh my goodness.
And the food was terrible. And in almost every case, it's pay. They just don't pay them, eh?
Yeah.
And then they fine them for whatever, any little infraction.
And that's ridiculous.
So they end up being slaves, basically. And they're on these ships for months and months and months.
Yeah.
In
They
some
can't do
cases, years.
anything.
And there's,
Yeah.
well, they're not. They're like from countries like the Philippines and a place like that where they have no power.
Yeah.
And then they get out to sea. They're afraid of their own lives. And I mean, it's not. There's no support, right?
Yeah. And I heard that from Brian, sometimes there might be retribution from the families at home.
They always there's always a fear that the families will be attacked.
Yeah.
And then there's always that thing that if you do cause a problem and you'll never sail again, nobody will ever hire you.
Yeah.
So what do you do if that's the only job available to you
Yeah.
in a country where you live, and they say you're not working anymore if you cause any trouble? So it's not a good situation.
Yeah. And I think from the time you were a longshoreman, did you see conditions improve for crewmen?
Well, it would depend on the ship
Yeah.
and the company. Like the American crew were treated really well. Well, they were unionized, and so their ships were in good, and they were paid well.
Yeah.
The British were not bad.
Yeah.
And the Japanese and those they were pretty good. It was basically the Greek ships and some of those third world countries.
Yeah.
That the crew, they would get crew from wherever,
Yeah.
and most of them were nationals of that shipping line. They were just people they'd pick up,
Right.
so they could treat them the way they wanted. Right? They had no power at all.
Yeah. And for the longshoremen, I guess you guys must have had respect for these crewmen. You know, their work is hard, but it's a different type of work.
Yeah, well, some people would become friends. Like some of these ships would be on a run. They'd be here every 3 months.
Yeah.
So some guys would get to know some of the crew, and they would take them home for supper and stuff like that. Eh?
Yeah. But would that be okay though to take a sailor and hang out with him?
Yeah, there's no problem.
No
Yeah.
problem?
No.
And what happened with were there any language barriers?
Sometimes, or the English would be very, very limited, you know. But there was lots of people who couldn't speak English at all.
Yeah.
And that's a problem not for us per se, but for the crew, because they were such a mixture of languages that to even run the ship was tricky because they couldn't.
Even amongst the crewmen themselves.
Yeah, they couldn't understand what to do.
Oh my goodness.
And there's times like trying to tie the ship up. Well, nobody knew what the mate was saying, and so it was purely guesswork that they got it done.
Did they use any hand signals?
Hand signals and shouting and hollering and all kinds of things. But language was a big barrier, big problem.
Yeah. Would you what if a crewman was sick? Would the longshoremen take him to the hospital or give him medicine?
Not that I know of. If they were sick, they would bring the doctor that would come down. They would get a doctor and come down, or nurses, and or they would take them to the hospital. Like that's happened. The ambulance would come and they would take them to the hospital.
Yeah.
And like there was one ship where a crew had fallen down the hatch, and he was in really bad shape. And so as soon as the ship was coming in, so they were opening the hatches so it would be ready for us to work.
Yeah.
And so the ship wasn't very far off the dock. And the guy fell down the hatch. Well, as soon as they got it in, the ambulance was right there and took him away.
Yeah.
I don't know. I can't remember how he fared, but that happened a fair bit. Not a lot, but a fair bit.
Falling down the hatch?
Yeah.
Even with longshoremen as well?
Yeah, we've had several people fall down the hatch.
Yeah, and what kind of injuries would there be? Like broken bones?
Some broken bones. Nobody ever that I know of died. Lots of broken bones.
Yeah.
In fact, the fellow, this Bernie LaHaye, that took the crew and had about 20 of them sleep in his basement, he fell down the hatch.
Oh, okay.
And he had minor brain injury after that because he landed right on his head.
And he got concussion maybe?
Oh, yeah, he was... he had kind of walked kind of not stable after. But
oh my goodness, yeah. But did you guys help him out though? I'm sure was there like WCB.
Yeah, Workers' Compensation Board. Yeah, it was that. Yeah, but the trouble with the Workers' Compensation Board back then is you had to wait. I think it was 2 weeks before you got a check.
That's a long time.
And it was really difficult. So what happened was most people, unless it was really, really serious, wouldn't go on WCB. They just go back to work.
Okay.
Because I can remember guys that had broken their foot would come to work with a walking cast and work rather than go on WCB.
Wow. So those guys, like, with a broken foot, what type would they be delegated to do easier jobs?
No, they do the same job.
Same job?
Yeah, if you're down below carrying lumber, you're down below carrying lumber.
And people, well, he'd obviously be slower.
Yeah. Well, you'd kind of help out a bit, but the guy still had to do his carrying his lumber or whatever it was.
Oh, my goodness.
And lots of people would, like, you'd break your ribs because you get hit with something.
Yeah.
There was no stopping. You just kept going.
Was there a first aid person or a nurse on site?
Yeah, there was first aid on most of the ships. There was, yeah.
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 That's good.
So they would just kind of bandage you up and you go back to work.
Oh, wow. So, do you think 502 more than 500 supported crewmen strikes?
No, I wouldn't say so. No, if the crew went on strike in Vancouver, they would get the same support. Yeah, it would be identical. Yeah, they would. It would be the same sort. They put the picket line up at the end of the gangplank. Yeah. Our guys wouldn't cross. They'd be there by early in the morning, so that. And if anybody had gone on the ship, they'd come off right away.
Yeah.
And so we would refuse to cross. And then the business agent would go down and see what was going on. And then if it was a prolonged thing, they would get Tom McGrath involved as well, because he was a Seamen's Union guy.
Was it an ILW kind of protocol to support crewmen strikes?
Yeah. It was just an understanding that you didn't. If there was a pig line, you didn't cross, regardless.
Yeah.
And then if it was crew, you knew that the strike was legitimate. There was a serious problem. Like I say, almost always it was money. They hadn't been paid for months.
Yeah, so for a crewman to strike, it must have been really serious.
It was really serious, yeah. Well, they knew that they were finished. Like, they weren't going back on that ship.
Wow.
Most of them, the ship wouldn't have them back, A. And B, they didn't want to go back.
Yeah.
Because once they got out to sea, they could do anything to them.
Yeah, that's right.
Throw them over or whatever.
Yeah.
So they wouldn't, once you went on strike, you're done. That was the end of that ship for you.
Wow.
So you're here in Canada and your home is in Philippines or wherever, or India. So you're not sure you're going to get back, right?
Yeah.
So to go on strike, it had to be serious.
So it's like the last resort.
Yeah, it was, yeah. And I think that's one of the reasons they knew that if they wanted to get to Canada, Vancouver, Newsminster, that they would get support and probably end up at least getting sent home anyway.
Yeah, safely.
Safely, yeah. Because in every case, we would get them air tickets back to wherever their home was.
Yeah. And How would you know they were going to strike? Would they just get off the ship and
No,
just
they were
stand
just
for them?
they just put up a picket line. We'd go to work in the morning or head in, and there they'd be there with sometimes with crudely written signs and
Yeah.
just say crew on strike, and that would be it. We wouldn't cross.
Okay. That's nice because solidarity
Yeah.
towards the crewmen. Can you talk a bit about maybe 502's global connections? I remember last time you mentioned the Russian wheat deal and how 502 handled thousands and thousands.
Oh, thousands of times. Yeah, there was a couple of. There was one Indian one that where the Canadian government supplied fertilizer to India, and it was made by Sherritt Gordon. It was ammonium nitrate, the kind of stuff they used to make bombs with.
Oh yeah.
And so the Canadian government donated the fertilizer.
So it was aid.
It was aid,
Yeah.
and the Indian government had to supply the ships to haul it. So we loaded thousands. And in fact, I worked, I think, 6 months on fertilizer ships, nothing but. I was finished one, go on another one.
Wow. Do you know what year this was, or what
This
time
would be in the
period?
60s.
In the 60s.
Yeah. And fertilizer was in 112-pound bags, sacks.
Yeah.
And we'd start in the bottom of the ship and go right up to the fill it right up. It would take you sometimes 3 weeks to a month to do.
Yeah, with some longshoremen get sick and tired of just handling fertilizer.
No, you didn't, because if you didn't work, you didn't get paid,
Oh,
right?
right.
So and it wasn't. I mean, you were carrying the sacks.
Yeah.
We had to carry them, but it wasn't really that bad a job because there was 40 sacks to load. So there's 4 guys, so each guy did 10 sacks.
Oh, it's not too bad.
And then we could do the unload faster than the gear could bring it to us because it was steam winches and they were slow.
Yeah.
So the way, like I said before, the ship was divided down the middle, so it's 4 men on one side, 4 on the other. So the cargo would be coming from the dock. So the offshore side would get the first load, shore side would get the second, and then the offshore would get the third, and back and forth. So you'd have both guys would have all their sacks down, and you'd be waiting the other side to get loaded, and then you had to wait for your turn. So you'd get quite a rest, eh?
Yeah.
We used to call that hanging the hook.
Hang the hook.
We'd hang the hook on the gear on the top side.
Yeah.
We used to try and hang the hook on each other too, but
Yeah.
so we'd hang the hook on the top side, so you get a rest. So the sacks weren't, you could handle them. We were strong, so we could actually throw them, right?
Wow.
We
so-
could throw a 100-pound sack.
Wow.
And
would it be put on a pallet and then?
It'd be on a
and then
pallet, yeah.
The winch would the hook.
The
and the
winch would come
yeah.
down. They had spreaders and cables with wooden slats, and they'd go on the ends of the pallet, and they'd bring it down.
Yeah.
And then we got dollies, like wagons,
Yeah.
and we land them on that. And we'd build a road into the wings,
Yeah.
and we'd wheel it in and do it. So when we started, we used to come out 5 sacks high, and you keep it nice and flat because the next floor you had to walk on that, so
Yeah.
you kept it as smooth and as flat as you possibly could. Eh? So you'd come out 5 sacks, and then 5 sacks, and then 5 sacks until you got up to the ceiling. Then you'd wing it up.
Yeah.
So and then that's what we did. Fertilizer for, like I said, about 6 months. That's all I did was fertilizer sacks.
Wow.
I didn't do anything. Your arms would get raw because
Yeah.
your sweat and the ammonia would you get all red here.
Oh, okay. Since that fertilizer it was used for explosives, I know some longshoremen smoked, but they not smoke around.
Oh, they smoked,
They
yeah.
still smoke around fertilizer
oh, yeah.
sacks? Yeah.
Yeah, oh yeah. The only time you weren't allowed to smoke was on what we called nitro prills.
Okay, what were
That was
those?
another fertilizer product. And those sacks, they were paper sacks, and they were 100 pounds, I think. And that was interesting, because we'd have to make ditches, channels, for the gas to go out.
Oh, okay. Wow.
So you'd come out 5 sacks, and I think it was like we'd do 10 sacks wide, and then we'd leave a little 4-inch ditch, and then did 10 sacks. And all these ditches were connected together. And then there was, at the square, there was we'd leave chimneys for the gas to then go up out of the ship. And there you weren't allowed to smoke. They'd really go crazy if they saw you smoke. Because the fumes, that's what blew up that ship. The Green Hill Park was...
where's that?
It happened in Vancouver, and it happened in Halifax.
Oh, wow. Oh yeah, I think I read.
Yeah, the
heard
Green Hill
about that.
Park,
Yeah.
and that's what, because if it got wet, it gave off the gas,
Yeah.
and the gas was highly explosive. So you weren't allowed to smoke there, but the nitro pills, they didn't care.
Oh, okay. And
I mean, the ammonium nitrate.
yeah. So when was the Russian wheat deal?
The wheat deal was at about the same time, and it was the same kind of a thing. We sold wheat to the Russians, and I think we sold it really cheap, but they had to supply the ships, so the Russian ships came in, and that was against Sachs.
Yeah.
And so you'd get on when it was wheat season, because that's seasonal, that is,
Yeah.
right? Because it depends on the harvest. So when it was time to ship, that you'd be doing wheat for months, just off one ship onto the other.
You could be doing wheat for 6 months straight.
Well, not quite that long,
Okay.
but you'd be 2-3 months
Wow.
doing wheat.
Okay.
And it was the same kind of a drill. Like you come down and you just floor it off 5 high until
Yeah.
you wing it up. Yeah.
Um.
And then there was a flour thing, same thing.
Yeah. Was flour ever used as aid?
I think so. Yeah, it was part of the deal. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because we did wheat and flour, but mostly wheat.
Mostly wheat.
And then wheat was also poured in the ships too, just poured in.
Yeah, the grain elevator.
The grain elevator, yeah. And they would just pour the wheat in. And that was interesting too, because there would be lots of guys down there in the hatch, and they would just pour it in the hatch, and it would go black because the wheat would fill up the whole
Oh
hatch.
yeah, there's no light.
No light, and then we had shovels. You'd have to shovel it. You had to shovel your way out,
Wow.
and you'd keep shoveling until you'd reduce the pile down,
Yeah.
and the square was open. And then they would hire, I don't know how many guys. There'd be 60 people, and they'd put it in sacks, and they'd lay a layer of sacks over the top of the wheat.
Yeah.
And you'd try and get it as flat as you could, because then we'd stow lumber on top of that, because you couldn't fill the ship completely full of wheat.
Yeah.
So you'd fill up maybe the lower hold 3/4 were full, and you put this layer of sacks filled with wheat,
Yeah.
and then you'd start lumber on top of that.
Was the wheat dust ever a problem?
Well, we're terrible.
Terrible. Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you guys wear any masks?
You
or-
get these kind of dust, but nobody would hardly, because you couldn't breathe with them either. So
Yeah.
most guys didn't wear them, but they would give you masks, those
Yeah.
little white dust masks they had,
Yeah.
but they were useless.
Jesus, yeah.
So, yeah, so you just endured the wheat. That's all.
Yeah. Oh,
The dust.
were there any other kind of big significant commodities you remember that was, you because of a trade agreement?
No, those were kind of those aid agreements,
Yeah.
and the wheat deal was a sale, but it was they sold the wheat really cheap.
Yeah.
The rest of the stuff was like the next big commodity we handled was lumber.
Yeah.
Lumber, millions and millions and
Yeah.
billions of board feet of lumber, and that was just that was just straight trade deals.
Yeah. And do you know where most of the
We
lumber
went a lot of
went
it to England,
England?
and then to Japan. Japan became a huge trader in lumber,
Yeah.
and then it went all over the world actually. But those are the big issue. Yeah.
Oh.
And we handled what they called 3x9s. We did. I think I've told you this.
Yeah.
The lumber was 3 inches thick and 9 inches
Yeah.
wide, and the shortest was 8 feet, and the longest was 40. And you would come down big loads, and then you just carried them
By hand.
by hand. Yeah, two guys. Well, and we had the hatch, number 2 hatch in the Liberty ship was 90 feet long, and the other ones were shorter.
Yeah.
So number 2 hatch, they would usually hire 4 spares. Those are the kind of jobs we would get, 2 extra guys per side, because it was such a long walk.
Yeah.
So they would say to the 2 spares, the side runner would say, "You take the long ones and hit the dumb end." That means you carried it to the furthest
Oh
wall.
my goodness.
So you'd end up carrying it. I mean, when you think about it, it was stupid. I mean, we'd take the 40-footers and carry them all the way down to the end. And we should just drop the 40-footers right at the load.
Yeah.
But that's what
It wouldn't have made a difference.
No,
you know?
that's
Yeah.
right. So, but they would say that so that we would just take all the 40s and 30s and the long ones and carry them to the far
Oh
end.
my goodness. Yeah.
Yeah.
And how many piles high, how many levels of lumber would you stack on top of each other? Was it just one?
One floor at a time.
One floor?
You'd go up 3 inches at a time.
3 inches at a time?
Yeah. Until you got to 6 feet, and then you'd start winging up.
Oh my goodness.
And then you would
6 feet.
lift it up. Because the rule was that if you had less than 6 feet, they got what they call headroom, 10 cents an hour.
What does that mean?
You haven't got 6 feet of clearance between the deck, the ceiling and the floor. So they always made sure that you had at least 6 feet. So, and a lot of the hatches, they had what they call a big strong beam. It was a huge beam right at the entrance of the hatch.
Yeah.
And then so then it would be 6 feet there, but it would be 8 feet inside there because that beam would be hanging down.
Go through. Yeah.
Yeah, and then the inside would be the ceiling, right?
Yeah.
So you'd have to wing up 8 feet, not 6 feet.
Wow.
So you'd build kind of stairs up.
So, but I'm sure, at first it must have been really hard to kind of figure out which, where to put. It's kind of like Lego, where to see which pieces.
Well, you learn pretty quick.
Yeah.
And lots of times you'd get a partner that been around for a while.
Okay, so usually, sometimes the younger guys would be with
Usually,
the older
very
guys?
rarely would it be two new young guys together.
Okay.
Sometimes one of the senior guys they'd say to you, okay, you're working with me, because they want to test you out, right?
Okay.
So, because I remember this one time, in fact, it was Cease Goodall, and him and it turned out to be good friends after. But the first time I worked with Cease, it was 3x9s, but they were all block stove. They were all 20-footers. They'd made them the same length.
Yeah.
But we didn't have a machine, so we broke the bands and handed them. So he grabbed 2 of these 3x9s, 20 feet long, and he pushed them at me. And he said, okay, young whippersnapper, I'm going to see how good you are. And it was wintertime, and I had one of those heavy Mackinac jackets on.
Yeah.
And he said, I'm going to have that jacket off you today. And I didn't say anything, because you didn't say anything. These guys were like,
You wouldn't talk back.
You don't talk back. So I just did, and all day, and we didn't run, but we were walking really fast.
Yeah.
And by the end of the day, I was so tired. I just went home and went to bed. I didn't eat supper or anything, but I didn't take my jacket off.
Yeah.
The next day, come back and see him. Then we took one.
Yeah.
But they're just testing you. I think.
Yeah.
That's the way it was.
And what happens if you fail the test or you didn't perform to their standard?
They would go out, they'd walk out to the center of the hatch and call for the foreman.
Yeah.
And the foreman would come and he'd say, he goes or I go.
Wow.
And he wouldn't go because he's senior, right?
Right.
So the foreman would say, Michelle, you're back to the hall.
Yeah. And so in that way, probably at first the newer longshoreman must have been really nervous and perhaps that sense of urgency. I better.
Well, I guess nobody showed that. Didn't even
okay.
say. You just go down and there's some people. Some of the side runners are actually they're kind of mean, right?
Yeah.
There was a couple guys that as soon as they put the leg over the ladder, they see who it was.
Yeah.
They'd say, "He's not coming here. He's not coming here." They'd say, "He's not working down here," and then the foreman would say, "Back to the hall."
Is it because
they didn't like him? The guy said something.
So it could be personal issues.
Well, either the guy didn't do what he was told,
Right.
or he didn't work hard enough, or whatever the reason. Could be any reason.
Yeah.
He would just say, "He's not coming here," and that would be it. You'd be gone.
Wow.
And then they would go, if it was bad enough, they would go into the hall at night and say, "Don't ever send Michelle to my gang again."
So
The dispatcher
you would tell the dispatcher.
You
that.
tell the dispatcher,
Yeah.
"Don't ever send Michelle to my gang again," and you wouldn't go there.
Yeah. And I'm sure some of the longshoremen, they must have been upset when they couldn't. They're basically banned from working with a certain group.
Well,
of people.
most guys would either just go and work somewhere else, or they just don't work in that gang.
Would there be any conflicts? I mean, after work, or the next day, and
No,
guys would talk to each other and be like,
No.
no.
I mean, there was the odd, I guess, scuffle went on, or some, guys would get into arguments, but not in those cases. If you were a brand new guy or just a young guy, and the side runner said, "I don't want you in my gang anymore," there's nothing said. You're just gone.
Well, were people ever discriminated because I don't want a South Asian guy?
No.
No?
I can honestly say that I don't ever remember a case where
Racism?
race was an issue.
Wow. Okay.
I mean, it was either they didn't like you because you didn't do something,
Yeah.
or maybe you said some smart aleck remark.
Yeah.
That would finish you off right there, right?
Yeah.
And so, but no, I never heard anybody say, "I don't want that person because they're black," or anything. Nothing.
Yeah.
No, that wasn't an issue.
That's the good.
Yeah. No, we had several races, different people.
Yeah.
Lots of East Indian people.
Yeah.
And, but no, I've never heard anybody ever say, "I don't want that guy because he's a race that's different than mine.
Yeah. And,
No, it was always some other issue.
and let's say someone had said that, would that person, get, you know, like punished by the executives for racism?
Not if maybe if it got
Really
the
serious.
charges
Yeah.
laid, but sometimes if somebody said something, one of the other guys would say, that's you're out of line there.
Yeah. Yeah. That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, do you remember flour ever being sent to Brazil?
Flour been to Brazil? I don't remember it, but it probably was. Yeah.
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 Yeah. Because in the Colombian, there was a story about aid being sent to Brazil.
Yeah.
But that was not quite sure when that was. But yeah, maybe maybe late 1950s or early 1960s.
It could be. Yeah. It went all over the world. I mean, ships, and you couldn't tell by the ship because they would lease ships from wherever they could get them.
Yeah.
So you could have Greek ships hauling cargo to China, sort of thing.
Yeah. And
you wouldn't know just by the crew where it was going. You'd know because sometimes you'd see the manifest,
Yeah.
But the ship didn't matter. They would lease ships wherever they could, wherever they get the cheapest.
Yeah.
Which meant they'd hire crews for the cheapest too.
And those ships were probably not in good
No,
condition.
a lot of the ships that we did were built for the Second World War. They were what they call Liberties.
Yeah.
And so they, and Onassis, the Greek shipping
Yeah.
magnate, bought them by the thousands.
Yeah.
And just put crews on them and sent them wherever. So they would come in and they were in bad shape. Some of them, I remember one ship, there was a huge crack you could see right outside in the hull. And they'd put cement on it.
But that's still very dangerous.
Yeah, and the gear was rotten and rusty and bent booms, all kind. We had huge fights over that. We would refuse to work until they straightened the boom.
I've heard from a lot of longshoremen that New Westminster was really renowned for being a really safety conscious port.
Yeah, they used to say that if ship worked in Westminster, it could work anywhere in the world.
Do you know where that started?
It started when us young guys got on the ship. We would go do it when you first went on. The gear was all down, and you would inspect it, and you'd look to see if the booms were bent.
Yeah.
And if they were, you'd say we're not working. That boom's bent.
Yeah.
And you check all the pad eyes to make, because if there was 10% of wear, you didn't have to work it, because they would wear from the shackles going back and forth. They'd wear a groove in the pad eye, right? So if it wore down 10% of the diameter, you would refuse to work. So we'd go over that, and ropes would be rotten, guys, and wires. So we would just say we're not working it.
And do you think so? You say the newer guy, so maybe guys like you who started during the 1960s.
Yeah.
Would you say? And do you think that's because the ships that are being used now were these ships from World War II, and they were really just in bad condition, some of them, and
well, I don't know. Maybe it was just our generation.
your generation,
Yeah. And like the older guys were the same, but we made our young guys made an issue because like from 60 on, the Waterford started to expand.
Yeah.
And so these old rust buckets would come in, and we would just go over them and inspect them.
Yeah.
And then we got a bit of a reputation, which we had to defend, so we'd go a little harder on it. And we would get fired too. Like they'd fire you we'd say this isn't safe. They'd say you're fired.
Who would fire you?
The company.
The company?
And then we'd have an arbitration, and we would win that because most arbitrators are not going to.
They're going to say no.
We
want you to work in unsafe.
this is unsafe, but we're still going to. So then it became that if you said it was not good, they just fixed it.
Yeah.
And it was easier.
And do you think that obviously the crewmen couldn't say that, but do you think maybe the crewmen appreciated that you guys?
Well, they probably did. Yeah. They might not have liked it at the time because they had to go and fix everything.
Because they're the ones.
They had to go and fix it. But after, because they used that gear as well for whatever they had to do. So if the gear was in good shape, they were safer as well, right?
Yeah.
But I imagine at the time they didn't like it because they had to go and change all the wires and weld up whatever. So.
But nowadays, ships go to shipyards, right?
Yeah, and well, they still have guys fix them, and we still inspect them.
Yeah.
but the ships are in much better shape that come here anyway.
Yeah.
Because they can't afford that, that downtime. I do 100,000 a day for a ship. So if it's down a day for repair, that's 100,000 a week.
Yeah.
Plus all the wages, and it's not worth it, right?
Yeah, it's not worth it.
So they keep the ships in better condition now.
That's good.
So, and a lot of that kind of gear, those ships, we don't have anymore. The old we call standing gear.
Yeah.
It's mostly cranes now, and then there's container ships, right?
Yeah.
So it's changed big time.
What does automation mean to you?
Well, it means a whole lot of things. Actually, when you think about it, for me anyway, for our generation, it made the job easier. Because when I started, we carried everything. There was no machines. Everything that was on the ship was carried, or moved, or pushed, or rolled, or whatever, done by hand. And then over that I would say the first 10 years, it went from that to where everything is done by basically lift trucks. There's still some hand handling, but it got less and less and less. So it made the job physically a lot easier. And because of, I guess, trade expanded, the jobs expanded as well. Because when I started, there was, I'm going to say 300 people in the union, and now we're up to 800.
Oh yeah, that's a lot. It's about 100.
So that's over 40 some odd years, eh?
Yeah.
We've almost tripled it.
Yeah.
So the automation has created more work as well.
Yeah.
In our industry anyway.
Yeah.
So it's overall, I guess it's not 100%, but it's been a positive.
Yeah. And you hear like automation, mechanization. So do you think there's a difference between mechanization and automation for you?
Well, mechanization is, I guess, it's the machine coming on, like the lift truck.
Yeah.
And automation is now we're into electronics and computerization and machines without people on them.
Yeah.
So that's, but that automation mechanization term came from because Harry Bridges, who was the guy that started our union, he in the late 50s, or maybe middle late 50s, late 50s, realized that the industry was going to go from the old hand handling where everything was done by hand to where things were done by machines. So we had a huge debate in the union about that we have to modernize, and he came up with this idea of that is like the buyout now. We have people get laid off, they get a buyout, right? Well, and that's what it was. It was called the M&M agreement, modernization, mechanization. So the theory was that anybody that was displaced because of that would get, in those days it was $6,200, which was about a year's salary.
Yeah.
So that's what it came up with. It's called the M&M agreement. Now we expanded it up to where it's, I forget what it is now, 75,000 or something.
Yeah.
But what's happened over in our industry anyway, in Canada, nobody was ever laid off because of automation. I mean, we expanded, right?
Yeah.
So nobody ever received that money because they lost their job due to automation. So, but what happened was it's become like a retirement watch now. So when you retire, you get your M&M check.
Oh, okay. So is that in addition to your pension?
In addition to your pension.
Wow, that's
nice. Everybody gets this M&M. Well, we've got restrictions on it. You got to have so many hours a year. You can't. Yeah. You got to maintain a certain hour level to get it.
Yeah.
But if you do that for 35 years, you'll get the full.
Yeah.
Full pull. So that's what it's become.
Yeah. And so nowadays a lot of longshoremen are machine operators, right? Yeah. And when longshoremen talk about getting their ticket, I have a ticket for this machine,
Yeah, we call them ratings.
Ratings, okay.
So you take training.
Yeah.
And you become rated to operate a lift truck.
Yeah.
Or a reach stacker, or a gantry crane, or whatever, locomotive, all kinds of things. So in our industry, the more ratings you have, the more opportunities to work you have. They call it kicks at the can, right?
Yeah.
So the more ratings you got, the more, like, you go to the hall, and there may not be a lift truck job, but there might be a reach stacker. So if you got a reach stacker rating, you can go to work.
Yeah. And when did those rating system become implemented?
It started. Well, I started actually. So it started in the 60s, 70s.
60s, 70s?
Yeah. Well, we always had kind of training for winch.
Yeah.
But it was based strictly on seniority, right?
Yeah.
So seniority, you'd become a winch driver, and there was no formal training. You would just kind of say, I've got the seniority, the winch job, come open, I'm taking it.
Yeah, because it was considered easier.
It was a lot easier.
Yeah.
So you would just drive winch. So like I said, there was no lift trucks on the ships at all.
Yeah.
There was some on the dock. So, but when the lift trucks started to come on and the cranes, went from standing gear to cranes and different things, then we started a training system and ratings.
Yeah.
And then people realized pretty quickly that the more ratings you had, the more kicks at the can you got. So like some days you go to work, there would be no lift truck, but there might be a winch.
Yeah.
So if you're a winch driver, you got a job. If not, you didn't go to work.
Yeah.
So and now it's expanded. Now we've got, I don't know how many ratings we got now, skills that we have now. There's, I don't know, who knows.
Yeah.
And then the other advantage is we limited the number of people. Like I remember when there was there was 24 lift truck drivers on a board, so they rotated on the board. So it was by seniority. So if you could get on that board, you had that opportunity, right?
Yeah.
So each rating or skill has a limit to the number of people in it to try and make so that you can get work in that field of stuff. Because there's a bit of a danger if you don't do something for a long period of time, you get rusty at it, right?
Of course,
Yeah.
and I'm sure the union wants people with a certain certain tickets to do those jobs.
Yeah,
right?
they do. Yeah. You would
Capitalize on
ideally
it,
you'd
yeah.
have it would be enough work that the person would do that all the time.
Yeah.
But I mean that's not the way it is. But that's what you'd like. So that's why you kind of limit the number of people so that you can. Because you want to keep, and especially nowadays when equipment is really complicated and large and moving fast and hauling lots of weight. So you want people that are good at what they're doing.
Yeah.
Right? So that's the reason that's the rating system.
Yeah. I think that's good.
Yeah.
That.
And then there's, like the basic philosophy of the union is we have a base rate that everybody gets. And you get it from the day you start. Like we don't have starting wages. Like when you go to work in the waterfront, you get the base rate. Same as me, who's been there for 50 years.
Yeah.
And then we have what we call skill differentials, which we try and keep as small as we can.
So the difference of pay.
So if you're a lift truck driver, you get 20 cents an hour more or something like that.
Okay. Yeah.
And if you're a winch driver, you get 50 cents an hour more, and a hatch tender 70. There's different rates, but we try and keep those we call them skill pays, as low as we can, so that because we want to keep the base rate that's your salary, the base rate. Right?
Yeah. And what about people with trade skills? Like, do you need a welder sometimes?
Yeah,
an
lots.
electrician?
Yes.
Or...
Yeah, we have. That's the new coming thing is trades. So if you're an electrician, a welder, a mechanic, a painter, all those skills, they're and then again they get higher wages again.
Because to be a welder, for instance, you have to go to like BCIT. And
you have to go if you get an A ticket, which most places are requiring now. It takes you 3 or 4 years to do that.
Yeah.
Because you start out with a C and then you get a B and then an A.
Yeah.
So most of the places I think everybody wants a minimum B, mostly A, because when you do structural welding, you have to have a B or an A ticket, and you have to be some has to be X-rayed and all that kind of stuff. And then you have to be a heavy-duty mechanic, because you're working on big diesel engines and all kinds. And electricians, that's the coming field, electronics, because everything's now is these computers and controllers and all that kind of stuff. It's all electrical, so that's the coming thing. That's the long term in the future going to be one of those guys. Yeah.
Wow. But before, would you guys just called an electrician just to come on the ship?
On the ships there was no electrician.
Oh yeah, that's right. Or a welder to come on, or would.
Well, if we didn't have anything to do with any of that because it was the ship. If they would hire a marine company to come and fix whatever, and they would have welders and mechanics and skilled people. The docks had mechanics and welders and electricians because they maintained the dock, and they had lift trucks there.
Were those longshoremen?
They were. Yeah.
Okay.
They were dock workers. When I started, that was a separate local.
Oh, okay.
They were separate local. And there was the dock, and then there was a deep sea.
Where were their headquarters?
They had a little lunchroom which was their dispatch hall on the dock.
Oh, okay. So there was a New Westminster.
It was called 511. Yeah.
511.
Yeah.
Was it part of the ILW?
Yes, it was ILW 511. No dock workers, and then there was us 502. So we did ship work, and they did the dock.
this is the first time I've heard about that.
Yeah, and then the amalgamation happened in '63. We amalgamated the two locals. So then it was back and forth. They went everywhere. Because then all the orders for the dock came to the hall. So they would dispatch the dock from the hall. So we have an order to pick. Back then it was hatch tenders, winch drivers, slingmen, lift trucks down the line. And the dock workers was near the bottom, dock work.
Yeah.
So if you were going to get a dock, which is just basically a laborer on the dock, we call them dockmen.
Yeah.
You would just go there to the dock.
Did they have gangs as well? Or was it
Not
just
per se, no.
Okay.
It's everybody, in the dock, it was, they had what they call stage 1, 2, and 3 work. Stage 1 was feeding the hook, either bringing the cargo to the ship or taking it away.
Yeah.
Stage 2 was like loading rail cars, unloading rail cars, loading trucks. And stage 3 was maintenance, fixing that. So they had those 3 stages, and each stage had different rates of pay. So, like if you were feeding the ship, you got our rate, longshore rate. If you're doing stage 2 work, you got 50, 60 cents less. And maintenance got even less again. It's different.
Oh.
So, but when we got the amalgamation, we got everybody got the same rate across the board.
Okay.
So that happened in '66. So after that, then it just became 502, and we did whatever work, dock, ship, whatever there was.
Okay. Wow. And then what was deep sea?
Deep sea was working on the ships.
Oh, cooking the ships. Okay.
Yeah.
And did these dock workers need any other special training for if they're doing maintenance?
Well, they would take, again, the training was, they call it longshore training. Here's the key, there's the machine, get to work.
Yeah.
So they would drive lift trucks.
Yeah.
And they had these jitneys, these little tractors, because like metal and all the fertilizer would be pent on these long trailers. They'd pull a whole string of these trailers up to the hook with a little tractor. We called them jitneys.
Yeah.
And so they just pull it, and then they'd lift it off with the winch. So there was jitney drivers, and there was quite a few lift trucks. And then the skilled trades like mechanics and they had carpenters and painters and plumbers and electricians were all tradesmen that had gone through apprenticeships.
Yeah, but they were still paid the longshore.
They were paid less when I started, but when we got the one rate, and then they got a skill pay on top of that. Yeah. But they had a big on Pacific Coast Terminals where the key is now. Yeah. They had apprenticeship programs. So you would start at PCT as apprenticeship mechanic, and end up becoming a journeyman.
Yeah.
So they had it was quite a system actually.
Yeah.
Where they trained people.
Would casuals ever want to get on the dock worker dispatch?
Well, some guys would. I think there's a few people, not many, would work both. They would come to the hall and see if they get a job. They couldn't. They would go down to the dock and see if they get a job in the dock. Yeah. But they were not. They were just casuals that would go back and forth. Right?
Yeah.
There was a little bit, not a lot of that, but a little bit. But when we amalgamated, then dispatch was done out of the one place, right? Mm-hmm. So the dock dispatch moved into the hall, and they had a dispatcher there, and they would just dispatch according to that sequence I told you. So that's how they would do it.
Okay, and dock workers would go to any of the docks, Pacific Coast Terminals, West Shore.
Well, Fraser, Surrey, and then West Shore started up. When West Shore started, there was a separate contract.
Oh yeah, that's right.
So we had to get a group of casuals for there as well, and they got more training because the machinery there is way different than what we were. It's huge, and it's all. So they had a bit of a training program there.
Yeah, but would other longshoremen see dock workers just like them?
Oh yeah. Okay. Well, we teased them a lot. We called them backdoor bandits and all that kind of stuff. But it was mostly it wasn't serious.
Yeah.
Because when you really realize that it raised the labor pool larger, because there was work on the dock. There's often lots of times there would be no ships, but there'd be dock work.
Yeah.
So you'd get a job, eh?
Yeah.
Where normally you wouldn't if you were a deep sea guy and there was no ships with no work. Because there's always dock work, getting cargo ready for a ship that isn't here yet, or ship that's unloaded and then you've got to load it onto trucks to be taken to whoever owns it, wherever wants it, right? So there's always dock work when there's no ship work.
Oh, okay. Oh, this is the first time. Never heard about that. Yeah. So did you go to any conferences As
Yeah, well,
president?
we went to conventions a lot.
Conventions, yeah.
Yeah, a lot. Yeah, I went to several conventions down in, well, we have our own here, Canadian ones, and then we have the international where that's everybody from the union goes. They were usually held, well, somewhere in the States, usually they take turns, Los Angeles, San Francisco, different states. Sometimes they go to Hawaii. So they were every 2 years, so you'd go to, yeah, we did a lot of that.
So what would happen at these conventions? What would you guys talk about?
Well, all the issues of the day, political stuff, the latest trends in the industry. There'd be these huge debates about whether we do because even today there's guys that think the modernization and M&M agreement that came in was a bad idea.
Yeah.
So that goes on continually, right?
Yeah.
And so there's always those kinds of debates, and then there's always issues come up, right? There's always something come up that you have to deal with. And then that's where we nominate whoever's going to run for their office is nominated at the convention, and then
is that for just the ILW in general?
yeah,
That's
the
where they
ILW.
nominate,
So what they do is you get it down to 2 people for each office, and then that ballot goes out to the membership, and they pick between you or me, right?
Yeah.
So that's how they're done. So that's done at the conventions, and the Constitution is amended, and all those kind of things are done there, and finances and all that kind of stuff is discussed. Yeah. It's about a week.
A week? Wow, that's a long.
And then usually after the convention, they have a caucus, which deals with strictly the longshore labor problems. Like sometimes you're developing your demands for the next contract, or something new's come up, some new system, and you have to deal with that.
Yeah.
So there's usually a caucus after the convention. Sometimes it's only one day if there's nothing big to do.
Right.
Sometimes it might be going on for 3 months.
And is this representatives from different locals talking about the problems they've been having at this caucus?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, the Canadians we have right to go there. We can get up and we have voice and all the rest of it, but really it's none of our business actually. It's American things.
Oh, yeah, because you guys are on the West Coast. BC is quite the minority compared to
and
the
we're
States.
autonomous, right? And similarly with us, when we have a caucus, we have the same structure.
Yeah.
We have a caucus to deal with our contract. I mean, usually the international president comes up and he addresses it, and he can sit there and he can say what he wants, but really it's none of his business. He's just he's there as
a formality.
Yeah. I mean, he has input, and if we're doing, and he's got advice. If he knows we're doing something that's not too wise, he'll get up and say, this isn't really a good idea. We tried this and it didn't work. But other than that, it's our own business. We're too autonomous.
Yeah. So actually, that's one of my questions. Why is it just in BC the ports are autonomous? Like, would you say Vancouver is also autonomous from the rest of
we have the locals in the Canadian section, ILW Canada, are autonomous. We have our own business, and we sometimes tell each other to get lost. We're not going to do that.
Yeah.
And the Canadian area operates on consensus, right? I mean, they can't dictate. Say, okay, Michelle, you're President 5-2. This is what you're doing, because you'll say get lost. We're not doing that, right?
Yeah.
So we have a board meeting, and it's by majority, and it's a consensus. That's basically how we run our business.
Okay, so I'm trying to understand this. There's ILW Canada conferences.
Yeah, conventions and caucuses.
Yeah. And then there's the greater
the international,
ILW.
which is ILW North America, the West Coast of
West Coast,
and Hawaii.
And Hawaii, yes.
And then now we've got the pilots on the Suez Canal, not Suez, the Panama Canal, are a part of us now too.
Oh, is this a recent?
It's very recent, yeah.
Do you know when they became a part of ILW?
I'm going to say 2 years ago, 3.
Oh,
maybe
wow.
around there.
And they're not longshoremen, right?
No, they're ILW. I forget what they're called, but they're the pilots on
the river pilots.
Yeah, the canal pilots.
Canal pilots. Are the river pilots here a part of ILW?
Yeah, and we have the boat that takes the pilot out.
Yeah.
And we have the tugboats. Some of the tugboats are affiliated with us.
Yeah.
A lot of what we call marine unions that have something to do with the water, river, or the ocean. They're part of us or they're really close.
Yeah. Would you like some water? I think
No.
you can. Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Do river pilots have their own board then? Or
Yeah, the river pilots, they have the pilot authority.
yeah.
Consists of river pilots and the deep sea pilots. Let me get one of these things, Michelle.
Yeah, no worries.
Yeah, they those guys are king
Why do you say that?
because they what they do. They want you do what they say.
Yeah.
Yeah. But you need them.
Yeah, and what's his name? I listened to his oral history. Bill Bennett. He was a river pilot.
Yeah.
He has a British accent, but he talked about the training and the schooling.
Oh
and
yeah, it
they
takes
go
years
to-
to be a pilot. Yeah,
Yeah.
years and years and years. Yeah. Well, they start out. Lots of them as tugboat, I guess, deckhands,
Yeah.
and they take the courses and take all the training and end up being tugboat captains, and then they get their certification based on I can be a captain of a ship 10,000 ton, then 100,000 ton.
Yeah,
Then there's all that training to be a pilot. It takes a long time.
yeah,
And then, because you got a huge responsibility,
yeah. There's most definitely. You have to
Yeah.
know the river inside out.
Yeah.
And,
And then deep sea guys, they have to pick up the ships just bound by Victoria, the pilot station, and take them wherever on the way.
wow.
And then there's other ones that get on the ships in the north end of the island, go up to Rupert and all over the place.
Sorry. When was there always ILW Canada conventions, or did they start, or do you know when they started?
Well, the Canadian locals became ILW in the 40s, I think 42, 43, 44 up into there. And then once the ILW they started Westminster, Vancouver, and those, they would have conventions, or they would not really formal conventions,
Yeah.
but they would meet together, discuss,
Yeah.
because each local negotiated their own contracts with whatever companies that were in that port, right?
Yeah.
So there was a whole bunch of different wage rates and working conditions and all kinds of crazy stuff went on.
Yeah.
Vancouver never did have their own dispatch. We had to.
Yeah, their
Company-
company is dispatched for
It's
that,
company
right?
dispatch,
Yeah.
and it still is. It's the only local on the coast. It is
And all of the West Coast.
on all the west coast.
Wow.
And here in Westminster was called the Westminster Waterfront Workers Associations, and there was three dispatch halls, and we would call them labor contractors today. Company would phone up and say, "Michelle, I need a gang," and you'd have this group of people that you knew, and you'd say, "Okay, you guys are going down the ship to work today."
Yeah.
So they would always phone you, and then there would be another guy doing the same thing for some other company, right? And then they amalgamated into Westminster Waterfront Workers.
And when was this?
Well, this would be in just after 35 strike, around 35, 34. And then the ILW, they tried to get the ILW, and it was smashed in 35. The strike in 35 was lost. And some guys belonged to both, but they had to keep it quiet. And then in 44, it became the certified bargaining unit here in BC.
And then those waterfront workers became ILW.
ILW, and then we did, like I say, Vancouver, Westminster, and Port Alberni, and the different locals would meet together, discuss, but there wasn't really a Canadian area. That didn't come until about 68, 67, somewhere in there.
Yeah.
No, sorry, what I say, 58, 59, somewhere in there. They would start meeting as a convention, Canadian locals.
Yeah.
And then we got our autonomy in 62, excuse me, 62. So we became ILW. We didn't call it ILW Canada as we know it today,
Yeah.
but Canadian section of the ILW.
Okay.
And then as this progressed to where we're now ILW Canada.
Yeah.
And so we used to send money down per diem, we called it. But we don't do that per capita, so we used to send, all we sent down now was just for the newspaper. We get that dispatcher once a month. Everybody gets the dispatcher.
Yeah.
So the money stays in Canada now and is used for Canadian purposes.
Okay. And just for the newspaper.
The
just for
newspaper,
Canadian
yeah, it's-
stuff. Yeah.
I think it's about $5 a month per member or something
Yeah.
for the newspaper.
Yeah. And what kind of things are in the dispatcher?
Well, there's the president writes a column on whatever the latest issue is,
Yeah.
and if it's negotiation time, there'll be a report on how negotiations are going, and when the convention's over, usually all the resolutions that have passed are there, so everybody can read them, and stuff like that. And then they'd have a section of people that have passed away, and another column of all the people who retired that month, and all that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And now they've just started it's like an editorial. Members write in letters and they publish them.
Oh, like, is it
Some pro and some con, but they write them.
but-
Whatever the issue is.
Oh, okay, but it's not like a story and like,
No,
it'll
be-
it's just strictly
Their opinion of the
political,
latest,
Yeah. Okay.
whatever motion was passed,
Yeah.
and what they think of it.
Oh wow, I think that's nice. You know,
Yeah.
for members to
Yeah.
kind of give their opinion.
So
like that.
that's the kind of stuff that's in there. It's
Yeah.
not a big paper. It's about 4 pages or
Oh,
six,
okay. Yeah.
6 pages sometimes.
Yeah. And would most longshoremen read this?
I think they do. Yeah, most guys do.
Would it be just in the local? Sorry, in the hall and.
Yeah, well, they mail it to your house.
Yeah.
But some guys, they send a bunch to the hall, and if the guy didn't get one, he can go get one there. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. That I didn't know about that either. Oh, but did you go to for the conventions? Did you go to with the conferences? Did you go to non-ILW ones?
Yeah, there's we were allowed delegates at the BC Fed convention, so we'd send whatever we were allowed. It's based on the number of members you have.
Yeah.
So we went to all of those. We belonged to the Westminster Labour Council. Yeah, all those kind of things. We went to them. Barge councils. There was an idea that they were going to have barges going up and down the coast. A ship would come into a port like Westminster, just empty itself.
Yeah.
And then all the containers or whatever, say for Los Angeles, would load it on a barge and tow it down there. And the same thing, a ship would go into Los Angeles, just dump everything. And any of the containers for Vancouver would be loaded on a barge and shipped back. They were going to have this barge going up and down the coast.
So longshoremen wouldn't be doing.
No, they would be doing it, yeah.
Would they be doing it? Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
So there was a barge conference to.
When was this?
This would be in the 70s, I guess, because I remember, yeah. I'll tell you an interesting story about that. Davy Lomas, and he was the Canadian area vice president. I was president of 502. And there was this barge conference in Los Angeles to discuss how we were going to deal with this issue. So we flew down there, and there was hardly anybody on the plane. I would say maybe 8 people. So when we landed in San Francisco, we were going down towards the customs, and there's this. They narrowed you down so you're one behind the other. And
Yeah. Single line.
single
style.
line, yeah, and you're walking it. So I get within about 8 feet of the customs officer because there's so few of us.
Yeah.
He says to me, "You're a union official, and so is that guy behind you."
Did they have your picture?
No. So we get talking to him, and I says, "Well, how'd you know that?" He says, "We knew that." And he says, and he gets this book. He opens up the book, and then there was my name, and the year I joined the union, and the year, all the offices that I held in the union.
Oh my gosh.
And he said, "You're okay." He said, "See this book here? If you're in there, you don't get in." Then he looks at Dave Lomas, and there's Dave Lomas, the year he joined the union, and all the offices he had.
Were you shocked?
Well, it was I thought that was kind of different.
Yeah. Well,
And then he just let us go.
did those instances ever happen again?
No, it's happened several times.
Several times. Is this when you went to the States usually?
Yeah, different things would happen then.
Wow.
So I say you're on the Pinko list.
Yeah. Can you tell me why would customs have your name?
Well, the RCMP had everything. It was part of the RC. It's part of that CSIS.
Yeah.
They had
Why would they spy on you guys?
And I think we're subversives. I guess we're gonna.
Do they think that you guys are just gonna strike?
No, I don't think they thought we were gonna
They're
start a
gonna-
revolution. I guess I don't
You
know.
convert other people,
Yeah,
become
yeah.
union members.
No, we'd be amazed what they held on us. Because I remember one time we were negotiating, and we were at the Canadian area offices, and we had a board meeting, and we went in there, and the office had been broken into, and nothing was stolen. All the files had been gone through. And the secretary, she had $15 in cash. She used to use a float for buying pencils or whatever.
Right.
None of that was taken. Nothing.
Yeah.
They had a camera that he had there for taking pictures of safety, Nothing was taken. And Mila was her name. She said, "Look at this, all the files have been gone through."
So, and obviously she knew, because she took
yeah,
care
she
of
knew,
the
yeah,
files,
because everything was out of her.
Yeah.
So what did they? We assumed that RCMP had come in at night and taken, I guess, photographs of all the files, but they made it look like a break-in.
Yeah.
But they should have taken the money, and they would, because that would have been the obvious thing to take.
Right, if it was a robbery,
It was right on her desk in this little bowl she had.
So they made it obvious. It was like the
So that kind of
RCMP.
stuff happened, yeah.
How often did that stuff happen?
Oh, not very often, but it would happen.
Would you tell the guys at the union hall?
No, he
this is what
didn't.
happened?
You
No?
just it's part of doing business. I mean, it's just the way it is. Just nothing you can do about it.
That just kind of tells you about how powerful ILWU is, that ceases with
Well, I don't know if they were, but there was this communist scare and everything else. So they had to keep track of all of us subversives.
Yeah, and so the RCMP checking your files. What time was this around?
This would have been in '69, I guess. 72 would be. Sorry, that was the first year we ordered back to work. Yeah.
Yeah, 1972. That's interesting.
Yeah. Oh, they did all kinds of things. One time there was a friend of our family. He was a longshoreman, and the police went and asked him all about me, and his wife phoned me, and she says the police were here and they'd asked us questions about you, because they'd known me since I was a kid, right? My dad and him were partners, and so all that kind of stuff happened.
Oh, so.
And then when the AIB thing, we had a general strike here, and
So what does AIB mean?
the Anti-Inflation Board.
Okay, yeah.
And there was a general strike, so our local had to picket the bus, because the bus drivers weren't going to honor the strike. They were going to run the buses.
Mm-hmm.
So we put picket lines up at the bus barns over there in Burnaby. And we had the midnight shift, so we were there from like 1 in the morning till 8. So a bunch of us guys, business agents and myself and a bunch of our members, were picketing back and forth. And these cars drive up, and all these guys in suits get out, and they walk along, and they walk beside us. And they said, "That guy's Joe Breaks, he's president. That guy's Jack Dale, he's the business agent. That guy's somebody else." They knew us all.
Do you think they take pictures of you guys
Oh, sure.
from afar?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Well, that reminds me.
I mean, if you go in any kind of a demonstration, they get pictures of you.
Yeah.
Guaranteed.
Okay. Good to know. I remember, this reminds me of you. You told me one time about undercover longshoremen, fake longshoremen, watching the Russian crewmen. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Well, we've always suspected there was guys on the waterfront that were RCMP or whatever, CSIS, whoever, that they'd worked their way up like everybody else. They'd started out as just casuals and they got themselves into the union, and that was their job, to be inside, if you will, and report whatever went on.
To be like a mole, a
Yeah.
rat, as
Oh
they
yeah,
say.
for sure.
And
Because we would do something like we'd have a meeting, and we'd minutes, and the company would have the minutes instantly. And how did they get that?
Yeah.
So I mean, and I'm pretty sure the government had them. Our CMP had them. Whatever.
Yeah.
So you get to the point where you understand that whatever you do, for all intents and purposes, is public.
Yeah.
So you just got to do it anyway. I mean, if you feel that.
Of course, but like make sure guys don't do anything too radical.
You don't. I mean, we never know who they were.
Yeah.
I mean, they just kept working and they retired and went on. Who knows? So, but you always had that suspicion, right?
Yeah, and when do you think this started happening?
Oh, it's happened from the beginning.
From the 1930s?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Wow.
Oh, yeah. It went on forever. It's been going on forever.
Is this something that most longshoremen would be aware that we may?
Oh, I would think so.
Have
Yeah.
a mole?
I would think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Because I remember one time we were having a caucus, and we had, they give you these books with all the demand. Anybody in the local union can send a resolution to the caucus saying, I want $100 an hour, I want more holiday pay, I want whatever. So you write up your resolution, you sign it, send it in. They all go into the pile and they're put into this book, and then we go through them and eliminate.
The ones that are unreasonable.
Well, and then you get ones for you'll get 50 on wages alone. I mean, which one do you go for, right?
Right.
Some guy wants $1, some guy wants 10. Which one do you pick, right? You can't go in the stuff and you say we want 50. So you go in. So we eliminate it. Well, I remember one time I had to go down to the BCMA for something. So I left the caucus, went down there, and went in to see the guy, and there was our book laying on his desk. A copy of our resolution book.
What did you say anything to him?
I said, "How'd you get that?" He just said, "I'm not telling you."
Wow. Okay.
And he was going through it, like he said, underlining, "This is not good. This is good."
And do you think this also happens at conferences too?
Oh, for sure.
Oh, for sure.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, for sure.
I was going to ask you, how many delegates do you bring?
Well, it's depend on your membership.
Yeah.
I can't remember. I think you're allowed one for the first 100, and then one for every 50 after that, or a major portion thereof. So I think now, because we're up to 800, we're entitled to about 10 or 12 delegates. Yeah, something like that. But that's how it's based. Every local's based on the number of members they have.
Yeah. And
because I think I told you the story about Hawaii. Hawaii is the largest local in the union. They got they had 140,000 members.
Yeah.
One big local.
Yeah.
So we were at a convention in Los Angeles, and there was this I can't remember what it was. Some contentious issue came up. So we can do what they call a roll call vote. You have to get up your seat before the meeting and say, "I want a roll call vote." Which each member, you vote your membership, right? So the Hawaii president gets up and said, "I want a roll call vote." So they have a roll call vote. So everybody voting yes, no, yes, no. He gets up and said, "I vote 140,000 no's. I'll admit it's lost. It's defeated."
Yeah.
Well, everybody's in a panic now because this was a really important issue, right?
Yeah.
So he waited a day.
Were you guys panicking?
Yeah, everybody was panicking. So then he waits. The next day he gets up and he said, "I want to put a motion on to reconsider that." So it passes.
Yeah.
And he said, "I want another roll call vote." So we had one. This time he gives 140,000 yeses. So now it passes.
Yeah.
Everybody's happy. He said, "I just wanted to show you guys where the power was."
Wow. Do they have more long ILWU workers combined
Yeah, they've got
than
everything.
everyone else in the
They've
West
got,
Coast?
like, there's hotel, the longshore, we know is traditional longshore, truckers, just about everybody's in ILW there.
Wow.
All one big local.
Yeah. And was that ever?
That was done from the beginning.
Yeah.
Jack Hall did that. Jack Hall's the guy that organized the Hawaiian Islands.
Yeah. And when was this?
And that's what they want to do, is have this one huge local.
Yeah.
And then it's divided up into divisions, and the sugar workers and all that,
Yeah.
deal with their problems that are unique to them.
Yeah.
But it's basically one huge local.
Did you did 502 or the ILW Canada ever think about having truckers a part of ILWU, like
No,
port truckers
no,
or any
no,
other type? No.
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 Well, we had kind of an understanding with the Teamsters that we wouldn't interfere with them and they wouldn't interfere with us.
Yeah.
So there's always been that separation, right?
Yeah.
Or we try to. I mean, there is some stuff goes on, but generally we try and keep peace among the
Yeah.
ranks.
Of course. Yeah. You didn't want to raid, as they
Yeah,
call
you're
it.
right. Yeah, yeah. No, you can try to expect other people's jurisdiction, right?
Yeah.
As much as you can.
Yeah. So do you think 502 had strong ties to other West Coast ports, or did this just the United States?
Yeah. Well, we had, you can technically still do it, but we used to do traveling cards. So guys would go down and get a traveling card and go down to wherever in the States, different ports, and work, eh?
And did
Basically,
you?
well, I didn't do it, but my dad did it when I was a kid because he was a longshoreman. We went to Los Angeles.
Oh, he took you the family down
Yeah,
to
took
Los
the family
Angeles?
down. Yeah,
Nice.
and we stayed there. Well, we left the day school was out and came back 2 days before school started, so we were down there all summer.
That must have been so nice.
It was good for us, yeah. So you could do that, eh? Now you can't. They get rid of you right away.
Oh,
Immigration gets you right away.
Oh, okay. So when did traveling cards stop?
Well, they technically haven't stopped. You can still get
You
one.
can still get one, but
you-
immigration like no.
Yeah, you get one day and that's it. They'll have you.
Because you don't have a visa
Yeah, that's
for
right, the
working.
green card, yeah.
Yeah.
So you can still get a traveling card, but there's no value.
Yeah.
In fact, I wouldn't be surprised that you wouldn't even get across the border. They would know you had it.
Yeah.
And they'd stop you and say, that's it, you're not going, Michelle.
Yeah. Because they don't want people taking the jobs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, what we suspect, I shouldn't say we know for sure,
Yeah.
is that the casuals would phone immigration and say, we've got this Canadian working here. And they would come and get him. Because you're cutting into the casuals' work.
Right, of course. Yeah. So then, I'm sure it worked both ways. Did you guys have people from the
Yeah.
States
Oh,
come
yeah.
up there?
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Well, the same thing. They would
Same
get a
thing?
traveling card and come up and work for 2-3 weeks or a month or whatever. And
Yeah.
they'd be traveling,
Yeah.
and go.
Nice way to see the West Coast.
Yeah, we do have traveling cards amongst the locals. Like I can get a travel. Not now, I'm a pensioner, but
Yeah.
I could get a traveling card and go and work in Rupert.
Oh, did that happen often?
Yeah, it happens. Yeah, or I can go in the island on a traveling card. We had lots of island guys come over here because the island was slack.
Yeah.
So they, I think we even waived the travel card requirement. They
Yeah.
just came over and worked.
Yeah. And when was this? When there
This-
was a lot
this-
of islanders coming?
Well, that was in the 90s.
In the 90s?
Yeah. The island was really, really slow.
Yeah.
And so I think we had about, I'm going to say 8 or 9 guys worked
Yeah.
almost full time here. Just worked here.
Yeah.
I think they moved their families over and rented places here and just worked.
Yeah. And did you guys ever keep touch with those guys?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
different people would.
Yeah.
I didn't work with them because I was at West Shore, right?
Yeah.
But people that worked with them, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's nice.
Yeah.
But you guys didn't have a problem when guys from Prince Rupert would come, right?
No,
Or-
no problem.
No
No.
problem at all.
No.
And
I mean,
yeah.
there's limits. I mean, if you said I'm going to move here and I'm just going to work here forever, you might take issue with that.
Yeah.
But if you're coming here to work a month or 2 months or whatever, no problem.
No problem. Yeah. And can you tell me when do you recall the first woman working on the waterfront?
Well, the first one was, we had one that it was a shame, but it was kind of illegal what happened there. They smoked her in and they gave her a job on a car ship.
Yeah, and she didn't go to the
The
seniority.
hall- she just went down to the job. She didn't
Yeah.
even go to the hall for dispatch. So that was kind of a shame because that put a damper on females coming to the waterfront for a while.
So, yeah.
But the first her name is Denise Block, and I'm going to say she started in the 90s, somewhere in
So
there.
after the first.
Yeah, the first one
Yeah.
this was back in the 80s when this happened. But Denise Block was the first female,
1990s.
somewhere in 90, 91, somewhere in there. She probably started before that, but I think she got to be a member in 1991, so
Yeah.
she might start in the late 80s.
Yeah.
Yeah, and now we've got quite a few. I don't know how many. We've got lots.
Yeah.
The lower boards are almost 50, I think.
Wow. Yeah. How would guys react when they saw a woman? I mean,
No problem.
no problem.
I mean, you always got a few guys
Yeah.
that got to make an issue of things.
Yeah.
But no, it wasn't an issue. And had they done it right, Ruth would have got in just like that.
Yeah.
Because her husband was a longshoreman and was killed.
Yeah, I heard that he drowned.
He backed his lift truck off the edge of the deck load. And, had he come down and registered in a normal way, he would have been in.
Yeah.
It's just the way it was done.
Yeah, and you guys did that, or because he left out. They had a lot of kids, right?
Well, I don't know. Her one son is on the waterfront now. I don't use any more. She might have done. I'm not sure about that.
Okay.
But her husband. In fact, her husband's the guy that sponsored me in the union.
Oh.
Yeah. Ivor Sandberget. And he was killed, and then I don't know how many years after that, they pulled this stunt, and
Yeah.
it wrecked it.
Yeah, but I'm sure they had good intentions, though, to have.
Well, I don't know if it was good
Good
intention or
intentions.
somebody wanted to make a name for himself. I don't know. and it got cocked up.
Yeah. When you go to the waterfront today, what message do you want to convey to the people?
Well, to me, is that they've got to stick together more than what they did. Like when we started, every gang was like a little mini union. They stuck together like.
Yeah.
And now because we're spread out so much, that kind of thing is lost, eh?
Yeah.
So we're kind of becoming individuals,
Yeah.
and we think like individuals, and so.
Oh, and do you think this is to do with mechanization and automation? Guys
Mostly, yeah.
aren't working in gangs.
Yeah, because now you can work with a partner and not really see them. Like you might be on a crane and the guy's bringing the cans to you.
Oh, he's working in a different machine.
He's in this machine, you're down here. You're actually working together. I mean, you're bringing the cans to him, we're hauling them away, so you're part of the group, really.
Yeah.
But you don't see him. I mean, you might hear him on the radio.
But yeah.
You don't see him.
Yeah.
And you may not see him all day. And you may never see him because he goes up in the crane, you get on your machine, and then at the end of the day, you're working together.
Yeah.
But you're not together, right?
Yeah. Is this something that a lot of the retired longshoremen are worried about?
Yeah, I would think so. Because most of the retired guys all started when everybody was in a gang.
Yeah.
And so you worked, if you were in that gang steady is one thing, but you worked in those gangs all the time. And so you stuck together. I mean, it was like a mini union.
Yeah.
And that was, you built that kind of relationship up that you stuck together, right?
Yeah.
And then there was the union in it as a whole. So some of that has been lost.
Yeah.
Because even when you do work in a group, like when you do a tear down, you take all the lashing off. There's might be 12, 14 of you working.
Yeah.
But you're working, but you're not together, right?
Yeah.
You're just working because you want to get the job done to get out of there. So you're just going, and you're not really caring too much, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, has the local tried different things to mitigate it? Maybe
not really. There's no real answer to
events,
it. Yeah.
Maybe more
well, they do that. We
or-
have a Christmas party and we have our picnic and things like that. But they don't really. They're not an offset to that. They don't.
It's not voluntary.
No,
It's just voluntary. You guys want to hang out.
And it's different socializing and then working, and it's different than when you're in a party situation and when you really need the guy to look after to kind of watch your back, right?
Yeah.
Those are two different situations, right?
Yeah.
So they don't really cross.
Yeah.
So some of that's been lost.
Yeah. I heard that there's an education committee teaching younger longshoremen about the history of
they started that when we started to grow really fast. When the Delta Port came on.
That was during 1980s.
Yeah, in the middle 90s, I guess.
90s, okay.
Yeah. The union went from around 300 and started to go up to about 4, 5, 6, 7, going up.
Yeah.
So we had people coming in. Well, there's people working on the dock who never worked out of the hall. They got a job as a mechanic on the dock and they're still there.
Yeah.
So it became an issue that we're kind of losing the connection, right?
Kind of the solidarity.
And people don't know their history. They don't know why do we do this? Like we just do it, and some say, well, why are we doing that? So they decided that we needed this education committee. So they got Jerry White and myself and a couple of other guys, and so now when we take people in, we do it in groups of 10 usually. So before the 10, we have this little night where we show a movie and we explain some of these.
What movie do you show them?
Well, we show them that it's called On the Waterfront. It was produced by the ILW.
I want to watch that.
Yeah, it's a 20-minute thing. And then I got a little clip, because we used to have what they called the shape up, which is dispatch.
Yeah.
Where you used to go down and they would pick you.
Yeah.
And if you paid a bribe or give them some money or bought a bottle, you'd get picked. Right?
Oh, it wasn't this the system where the dispatcher could pick someone who he liked?
Yeah.
He could be like, oh, you look strong, I'm going to pick
Yeah.
you. You're handsome, I'm going to pick you.
Yeah, well, people would go outside the gate of the dock.
Yeah.
And the foreman would come out. There'd be a huge crowd sometimes. And he'd have these little chits, maybe 10, 12 jobs. And he'd start handing them out. Well, if you gave him a bribe or bought him a bottle or whatever, he'd give you a chit, right?
Yeah.
So there was no system. It was strictly favoritism. and it was called the Shape Up.
Yeah, and this was before 1960s?
This is this way back in the 30s.
Late 30s, okay.
In fact, that's one of the reasons that the 35 Strike happened. They wanted a dispatch hall.
Yeah.
And a formal system, right? So that was that. So if you've ever seen that movie On the Waterfront, it's old. It's got to be 35 years old.
Yeah, okay.
Marlon Brando. Well, they've done a Hollywood version of the Shape Up. It's
okay. I'm gonna watch that movie too.
Yeah, and it's only about a, I don't know, 25, 30-second clip of a Shape Up. Eh?
Okay.
And this guy comes out and he's got these, and he says, anybody want to work? And you see guys touching their hat, giving signals that they'll pay their bribe. So he gives them a chip. Eh?
Yeah.
And then all these guys start to rush him, and he throws all the chips into the crowd, and a big fight breaks out.
My
I mean, that's done up to me, but just to show them what a Shape Up was like.
Yeah.
Eh? So that's how that happened. And so we show that. And then I got a bunch of the history, like, of how we started, and some of the highlights of the things.
Is it a timeline you show that?
Yeah, show line. I got this. I started in 35, the strike, and then when pensions came and amalgamation and all those different things.
Is this like a document you have?
Yeah, I just wrote it up. It's a little sheet that I use. And then we tell them that, and then different guys talking about.
Could I have a copy of that? Maybe next time, maybe at the next meeting.
Yeah.
Because I think that would be really good. To have that.
So I just did some of the highlight dates of things that have happened to us. It's not everything. It's just and then so we do that, and then everybody talks about what the waterfront's like and explains why some of the rules we have and why we have them. I don't know if it does any good or not, but then we do that.
Yeah, but no, I think it's good so people understand why.
Yeah, and now because we're into formal training.
Yeah.
Like before, there was no formal training.
Yeah.
You just went down the hall, and if they needed you, you went to work.
Yeah.
Now there's BCMA is involved in the registration process, and you get formal in-class training, and you go out and you try different things and to see if you're strong enough to lift the bars and all that. They know that there's a process now, which is not a bad thing, right?
Yeah.
So that's that, and so they're gonna. They want me to write up this little blurb about the history. I did that. They're gonna have a booklet with all the safety rules in it and all that. They're apparently drawing up this booklet now. So when they do the next registration, when they do the school, they're gonna give them these booklets.
Yeah. Who registers? Is it just can it be casuals, or is it people who've made membership?
It's casuals. It's people that have never worked in the waterfront. Like if you wanted to go on the waterfront, you'd have to go down and you get these. Well, I don't know how they're going to do it this time, but you get an actual registration.
Yeah.
And you fill it out and you put it in, and if you get picked, like they do it, like last time, I think they gave out 1,000 registrations, and then they hired I think it was a law firm and arranged them in 1 to 1,000. They just picked them out.
Okay, kind of like a lottery.
Lottery, yeah. And then and then they did it in groups of 250. So if you were in the first 250, they phoned you up and you went down and did this training and the class and all that, and then they put you on the T-board.
Yeah.
And then like 6 months, 8 months, where they need some more, they did the next 250.
So T-board is that temp?
I don't know where the word T came from, but it's the bottom board. That's where you start.
The casuals.
That's absolutely the bottom board.
Okay.
Brand new guys go there.
Okay.
And so they put all these 250 on the T-board, and as you move up, based on hours.
Yeah.
Then the T-board gets emptied or gets down, so they say, well, we need some more. So they do the next 250. Same process until 1,000 was used up. Eh?
So those guys who got the training, those are the only guys who can work on the waterfront. Whether or not they're like even from you want to be a casual, you have to take it back.
The only exception to that is trades.
Okay. Yeah.
If you're a mechanic or electrician or a welder,
yeah,
you don't have to go through that process.
Yeah.
You just bring down your tickets or your papers that are what you say you are.
Yeah.
And if they need an electrician, then they'll put you on the T-board and then you go to work.
Okay.
But then if you just want to be an operator or a checker or laborer or lift truck driver, any of those kind of things, you got to go through that process.
Okay. And this is the 1990s.
It started in, I'm going to say, the middle of the 90s somewhere.
Mid-90s.
I'm not sure exactly when, Michelle.
Okay. And I guess over time, I'm sure you guys have refined this program.
Yeah, they refined it, and BCMA's got involved in it. Before it was, they had nothing. They didn't care.
Yeah.
They just send me a body and as long as. So now they're involved in it and because there's formal training and there's safety things now that you have to explain So there's I forget how many hours of in class
Yeah.
instruction there is, and then there's a couple of days out on the dock where you do all this different stuff.
Oh, are also some of the senior guys showing like?
Yeah, they've got
guys?
trainers. Yeah, we've got
yeah.
trainers that show you how to do it and,
No, it's
see if
nice.
you can do it.
Yeah.
And then in class, I think BCMA's got a guy there, their safety guy, explains all the safety
Yeah.
stuff. Union's got a guy that explains, they go through all the rules and regulations of what it is, and so that's how it's done now. There's no more you walk in the hall and they put you to work. Those days are gone.
Yeah.
Because that's the way it was before.
Yeah.
You'd go to the hall and just hang around, and if all the members and casuals that were registered were dispatched, the dispatcher would say, anybody want to work? And they'd be charged up to the window and they'd pick you, right?
Yeah.
And then once you got registered, you're in. And you get a work number, and then you'd be into the system.
Yeah.
And then everything's based on hours after that.
Yeah. Well, I think that's good though. Safety. I mean, there's more formal safety
Yeah.
training, for sure.
It is in a way, but we've lost some control too, because now we could, register. Now we don't have basically any.
Because it's a lottery system.
Yeah, it's a lottery
basically.
system, and it's fraught with its own problems,
Yeah.
but anyway, that's the way it is. So.
Yeah. What if someone failed a portion of the course? Could they retake it?
Yeah, they redo it. They give them lots of chance. You almost have to be not working, they give you a lot of chance to try again.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was gonna ask you my last question. Have you ever been on any trade missions?
No, I was never. They started that after I left.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I never got to go in any of those. No.
Yeah.
Well, after I left, and not just me, it wasn't me, but there was the union had well, I guess the company had a union. They decided that this warring business isn't working, right?
What do you mean?
Fighting each other at loggerheads all over every issue all the time.
Yeah.
Nothing. There was nothing was agreed upon. So they decided that we should try to get together and work, because it was costing us work, right? Because people wouldn't come here because they knew it was going to be a war. Shipping lines wouldn't ship their cargo here because they knew it was going to be a war.
Because of safety.
Whatever.
Yeah.
We were mad at them. They were mad at us. Whatever the reason was. So they decided we should try and get together, and so it was the ports that did it, the Harbour Commissions and the Ports Canada. So they decided they'd have these trade missions to the places that we send our cargo to, and we'd take both parties to kind of show the world that we were getting along, right?
Yeah.
So that was that was the next era. I was in the era, the other era.
That was in the 1980s.
The 80s, yeah,
Yeah.
middle 80s, yeah.
Did you think it was a good thing?
Well, it's like there's nothing completely
Bad,
good or
yeah.
completely bad. There's advantages to doing
Yeah.
it, because when you go there and you can show that especially Japan, who didn't like the way we did our things,
Why?
well, they're an interesting place. I remember one time Cunningham, who was the president of the BCMA, he was at a meeting in Japan with these people, and the guy across the table says, "Do you know that Centennial Pier is shut down right now?" And he didn't know, but the Japanese knew.
Oh my goodness, that must have been awkward.
It was an embarrassment. And so that's part of it's good that you show that you're working together.
Yeah.
And so I remember David Lomas went on several of them, and he was in this. He said there was about 500 Japanese business people, and this guy from the port was giving his speech, and he opened it up to questions. And this one fellow stood up and he says, "Why has there never been a strike at West Shore?" And then sat down.
Oh, interesting.
And the guy couldn't come up with an answer. He didn't have an answer. He kind of fumbled around.
Yeah.
So Dave, as soon as he got the guy, he knew. He went right over to him after the meeting was over, and to say find out. And he was the guy who was in charge of importing coal into Japan.
Oh.
So he knew, eh?
Yeah.
So that's the way it is. So those things are good that you can deal with those kinds of things, right?
Yeah. To see, your employer face to
Yeah,
face,
yeah.
the shipping.
So they kind of slackened off now. They don't do it as much as they used
Yeah.
to. These trade delegations.
Yeah.
But they, for a while, they were going all over the world.
Yeah. That must have been nice or exciting for the.
Well, it is and it isn't. You're
Yeah.
meeting with people all day long. And
Oh yeah, like day after day after
it's not,
day.
it's not a holiday. You're busy dealing with people, and you got all these embarrassing questions to deal with. And so yeah, it is Peter.
Yeah.
It's it's okay. I
Yeah.
didn't get to go. That's
Yeah. Okay, I think we should end now.
yeah. I guess we better.